Greetings, I'm Stan Hustad, and welcome to the Marketing Life Coach. We simply call this program, as you saw, the treasure chest. Or we might say, what's in your treasure chest? Or this is a legacy project. That's right, we're in the business of helping people leave a legacy. A number of years ago, a gentleman named Stephen Covey, who may be well known to many of you, wrote a best-selling book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Did quite well by that book. And perhaps many of you now know what are some of those 7 habits. And one of them was this: begin with the end in mind. That's right, begin with the end in mind. Good advice for living a life. And that goes back to ancient wisdom, way back to a gentleman named St. Augustine, who simply said this: how do you want to be remembered? And he said that the quality of our lives would be significantly influenced by answering that question as we live our lives. How do we want to be remembered? Later on, again, one of my coaching heroes, Peter Drucker, who consulted businesses all over the world for many years, and toward the latter part of his consulting and coaching experience, said something like this. He said, you know what? I've discovered that if I really want to help a business leader to be good at what he or she is all about and build their company, I have to ask that old question. How do you want to be remembered? He discovered that he could not really help a person build a significant business unless they could understand the importance of their life and how they wanted to be remembered by their colleagues, by their clients, by their customers, by their board members, by the stakeholders in their company. Every contact they had was an attempt to build some learning and legacy and value into those encounters. So again, the question comes back to us: how do you want to be remembered? Why don't you begin with the end in mind? What kind of legacy do you want to leave with others? Now, this is not only a life question. For many of you, particularly in the insurance and financial services, it is a financial question. For some of you who work particularly in the legal field, who help people put together their will and their testament, and they decide how they want to guarantee that their estate will be preserved. So we have estate preservation and estate planning and a way to make sure that our wealth, our well-being, the things that we value, the things that we've put together, that legacy that we've created through a life of living, it's passed on to others. And recently, Congress in the United States of America has reinstituted, in at least a reduced but significant degree, the estate tax, which means is people are going to be challenged with the idea of how do they best structure their financial estate so that it can work and do and get the maximum value. So for those of us who are in the business of helping people, first of all financially, secondly in planning their life and their life legacy, and then simply for all of us to understand that a life well lived could be a life that makes a difference, that does useful work, does good things for other people. And as I point out, oftentimes it is the answer to the question, how do you want to be remembered? One of my coaches a number of years ago simply said this, and I've used this exercise from time to time. He said, the best way to figure out what you want in life is to plan your funeral, your memorial service, and then in an exercise in which many of you have already participated, write your tombstone. And that's still a vital part of the coaching and planning I do today. I simply ask myself this question: how do I want to be remembered? Because many people who I meet every day, that's going to be the last encounter they have with me. How do I want them to remember me? As a man, as a business leader, as a business owner, as someone who serves them, as a coach, client, colleague? How can I help them perform at their best? How do I want to be remembered? Now, I simply ask that introduction to sit on your head. And then today, I'm going to try and help you do something which I believe is an original approach to thinking about how we want to be remembered, how we want to do our estate, how we want to leave a legacy, or perhaps put a will and a final testament together. Now, for most people, this is something they don't want to talk about. Well, of course they don't want to talk about it. First of all, it sounds like we're talking about dying. Well, in some respect, we are. Sometimes it's about leaving an estate. Well, I don't have an estate. I'm not wealthy. I'm not rich. And the word estate may indicate some large mansion or some way of living that they're not used to. So when a lawyer or a financial planner or a counselor talks about estate planning or helping people figure out how to construct a legacy, you're talking about things that most people don't want to talk about. And you're talking about things they don't really understand because it's a lot of legal and financial mumbo-jumbo, and it can be confusing. And nobody wants to walk into a situation and be a part of a situation where they feel vulnerable and confused and they're doing something they would rather not talk about. Now, those of you who are in that particular line of work know all of those feelings. And so what I have devised is what I simply call the treasure chest as a way of helping you help the people you care about to have a conversation that is not just about money and not just about the legalities, but it truly talks about how a person can, with a smile, think about the way they want to live and the way they want to live and leave things for others. And so I simply call it, and I've got my little prop here, the treasure chest. And I ask the question, what's in your treasure chest? Now here's what I mean by this little illustration, and this, by the way, sits on my desk. And for many of my clients and friends, it sits on their desk as a way to start a conversation with the people they care about. Many of you are familiar with the film, the movie, the story, A Christmas Carol. It's certainly one of the all-time holiday favorites by Charles Dickens. And if you're familiar with the story, what you understand is that the ghost Marley comes back and talks to Scrooge, and he tells Scrooge that throughout his life he was forging chains. He wasn't aware of them, but his selfishness, his greed, his lack of concern for others, unbeknown to him, he was forging large links of chains that bogged him down, and he had to go through all eternity now dragging these terrible chains around. It's a rather moving scene, a rather chilling discovery. And for those of us who are seeking to live well and perhaps have an eternal perspective, we say, well, that's not something we would be too happy about. So I attempt to take that same idea and turn it into something a little more fun and something perhaps just as true. What I say is, guess what? Here it is again. We all have a treasure chest. And as we live our lives, we are filling that treasure chest up. That's right. We are putting things in a treasure chest, and someday, unbeknown to us in some way, this treasure chest is going to get passed on to somebody else. Our community, people we care about, our children. Whether we know it or not, they are going to open, they are going to have a treasure chest of stuff that we put in their life that is going to affect them in some way, perhaps positively and unfortunately even negatively. We're all filling up a treasure chest. Now, we're going to have some fun with this because all marketing and all good learning needs to be fun. So what you're going to find that we're going to discover that I'm going to say that you are putting 5 things in the treasure chest. Everything you are doing to put in the treasure chest, there's going to be 5 of them. And to make it fun and to give it a sense of alliteration, we're going to say that all of these things start with the letter M. All right? The 5 M's of what you're going to put into your life treasure chest, or how you're going to plan your estate, how you're going to leave a legacy. All right. Here we go. The 5 M's of estate planning, legacy leaving, making a difference, helping to change the world by how you live and what you pass on to others. What's the first M? Here we go. Memories. That's right. Memories. Now, for instance, in my little treasure chest here, this picture represents, this is my daughter when they were children. And when their grandma and grandpa came to visit them where we were living in the far Caribbean. And this picture is one of my favorite pictures. It's a childhood memory. And you know what? I'm putting things like that in my treasure chest. Memories. Now, I want you to think about that. What are some of the memories that you're going to try and put into the treasure chest for others? I mean, being very intentional about that. Ask people, what kind of memories do you want to create? Let me tell you a story that will illustrate it. A number of years ago, I and my wife, we went on a cruise, and that was always, we loved to do that. This was our first experience, by the way, and many of you know how that works. You get on the plane, and many of the people who may be on the same cruise ship are also on the same plane, making their way to the port of embarkation. And so the partying had kind of begun even before the plane had landed. It turns out that a young man sat in the seat next to me, and I said, well, what you doing? He said, we're going on a cruise. And I said, well, yeah, we're going on a cruise too. And of course, it turns out that we're on the same cruise ship. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And he simply said this, well, you know what? Grandpa promised us that we could all go on a cruise together. So my grandma, my grandpa, and my aunts and uncles, and all our cousins, he is paying for us all to go on a cruise together as a family. I says, wow. And he said, yeah, that's neat. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be so much fun. Well, as a coach and as somebody who was always looking for a good broadcasting story, I said, oh, where is your grandpa? Well, I found him up there and sat down, introduced myself, and said, you know, your grandson just told me a little bit about your project here. And he smiled. Said, I'll tell you about it. Turns out he was a very successful man. He'd worked hard. And he simply said this to me, you know, the grandchildren are growing up now. They'll be teenagers soon, and they don't want to spend a whole lot of time then, perhaps with grandma and grandpa. I went and talked to my financial advisor, and I looked at the situation we were in, and I said, you know what? I'd like to really have an event where I can create some real memories for my family. And I told him what I wanted to do, is I wanted to take the whole crew, and fully paid, on me, you know. My kids, their spouses, all the grandchildren, and let's spend a time on a cruise. And the only thing I said is, let's enjoy one another. The only thing they had to do is they have to agree that we'll have dinner together so everybody can do their own thing and have their own fun time, but we will spend time as a family. And at that time, I'm going to take the grandfather's liberty to tell a few stories and just tell them what they mean to me. And then he smiled and said, you know what I'm trying to do, and then he found out more about what I'm trying to do, Stan, is to create some memories. Because I want to pass on some memories to my children and my grandchildren, a way to remember me. And this is turning out to be a very significant investment, but you know what? I think it's worth it in creating some memories. Now, do you see where this is going? as we're thinking about the kinds of things we want to do with our money and our time and our energy, we're going to pass on memories to other people that's going to be in the treasure chest. And so I'm simply asking you, what are some of the memories that you, perhaps some of the things that you would like to help your clients and colleagues and customers be able to create? Now, this is not morbid. You see, this creates positive, fun energy. What could you do? What would you like to do? What would be important in the creation and in the sustaining of positive family, professional, maybe even company memories? Again, how do you want to be remembered? So the first thing you're going to put in that treasure chest are ways of depositing good memories. That's the first step. Now, the next one is mementos. Okay, there we go again. Mementos. All right, here's my treasure chest. Got my memories. I also have something else. Here's a simple memento. It's going to go in the treasure chest. You want to know the story behind that? When my dad died a number of years ago, my mother looked at me and said, with tears in her eye, she said, "Now there's no man to wear my ring anymore. He's gone." And then she said to me, "Stan, you're my oldest son. Would you wear your dad's ring? I would be so grateful." And she gave it to me. And to this very day, I wear my father's ring. It's a memento of who he was and the legacy that has been passed on to me. Now, does that mean everything about Dad and I was perfect? Oh, of course not. But that is a way of perhaps trying to figure out what are the important mementos. Now, I go through my stuff right now, and you know what? Once I'm gone, a lot of that stuff is just going to get thrown away. It's not that important. It's just, kind of junk that we keep around. And kids throw it away, other family members throw it away. But I'm going to ask you to be very intentional. What are some of the good things, the valuable things that truly would pass on as mementos? And who should get them? What about that pearl ring that your great-grandmother gave you? Are you going to pass it on? And to whom? Now, this is a wonderful time of exploration where families, even with laughter and smiles, can decide, what are we going to do with the precious stuff that we have, and how are we going to distribute it? Now, let me tell you a fun story, because I was giving this similar presentation at a group one time, and in fact, it was at a church. And this woman comes up to me after the presentation and said, "Stan," and she had a big tear in her eye, and she said, "Can I show you one of my precious mementos?" And I said, "Of course." And she reached into her purse and pulled out a cigarette lighter. And here it was. And I looked at it, and she says, "It's a Ronson cigarette lighter." Now, she didn't look like somebody who carried a Ronson cigarette lighter. She didn't look like a smoker. And then she looked at me, and then she started to tear up again. She said, "Stan, this is the lighter that my daddy carried when he stormed the beaches in Normandy in 1944. This was the lighter he was carrying that day." And later on, when I heard the story of what Dad did, he gave me his lighter. And it's one of my most precious possessions. Never smoke, never light anything, but that's my daddy's precious memento. And then she smiled and said, "And can you imagine, thanks to you, Stan, I can imagine what would happen. I haven't told anybody about that. In fact, what's going to happen, I can imagine, is when they're cleaning up my stuff, someone's going to say, 'Why does Mom have this old cigarette lighter here?' And they might throw it away, not knowing the story." And I said, "Well, you better make sure that people know what the story behind your Ronson cigarette lighter is. that it's not just a piece of junk that got passed on through the family. It truly is a memento. And by the way, who do you want to get it? Who would appreciate it? Which of the children, grandchildren, should it be passed on to with the story, so that the story and the legacy and the remembrances of your dad continue? She said, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to pass this on. Now, do you see, that story can be duplicated in so many ways, because you're going to pass on some mementos. And what I've discovered is oftentimes in helping people deal with some of the other tough issues, it is more fun and exciting and energizing to deal with this fun stuff first. The memories you want to create, the mementos that you will pass on, the things that are, fun and having to work with, that give people energy and a smile and a sense of enthusiasm about the process. There we go. Now the third one, we continue with the M. We call it monuments to faith and character. Now I can't bring something in, but let me just give you some idea of what I'm talking about. What if you actually gave a scholarship to people who have the same faith, character, values, and ideals that you did? You make a contribution to a college, a place of worship. That's what I'm talking about. What kind of monuments, either in people's lives or perhaps in brick and mortar physical things, that you would like to pass on? I remember one gentleman made this statement. He was giving a presentation in his local church, and he simply said, how many of you would like to leave $50,000 to your church? And everybody in that small group, they were committed people, said, that would be great, but we can't do it. Well, of course, many of you who are in the insurance and financial services know, oh, yes, you can. Through the proper use of insurance policies, there are ways to leave large gifts that are not only tax advantage, to use the term, but they allow people to leave a significant amount of money that is actually more than the initial investment they might have made by purchasing life insurance policies or something similar, or appreciated stock. That's what I'm asking people all the time. You're going to leave a monument, either physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, in the lives of others, to things that you believe in, things that are important to you, things that match up with who you are, your faith, your beliefs, your values, your character. What do you think you might want that to be? Now this gets exciting. This is not just talking about a will to XYZ college, or a will to this place of worship, or a will to this kind of situation or charity. It truly views that process as one in which you're leaving a little bit of a monument, not just to you, but to what you think is important and valuable. Now, do you see how that's beginning to work? Right now, we're not talking about all of the legalities and all the difficulties and all the process that goes into this. We're simply asking people to do what they want to do, which is to dream, to work with their desires. Now, that's very, very vital. Bruce Springsteen had a great line from one of his songs. It simply said this: everybody has a hungry heart. What I have discovered is that people who make a difference in the world, real change makers, are people who desire things. Now, that doesn't mean they're greedy. That doesn't mean they're selfish, but they want good things. They want to achieve things. They want to, if I can use a simple expression, receive their heart's desires. There are things that give them joy and happiness if they would know that they could accomplish these things, they could achieve these things, they could leave these things. They would know, I have fulfilled some of the purposes I have in life in my giving and leaving to others. I'm building a monument, a good thing, to the good things that I believe in and trust in. So, think about that. the third thing that's going to go into your treasure chest is monuments to faith and character. Well, those are the 3 M's. Now, of course, you're probably figuring out it's going to come right down to it. What's the 4th M? You're right. There we go. Of course. Some money. Some old-fashioned silver dollars I found from my grandmother, and I kind of keep them as mementos, but they're still legal tender. Money. That's right. Now we're getting down to what people can think about too. Hey, what do you want to do with your money? I mean, what do you want to do with it? We have news for you. You can't write a check and take it with you. The proverbial, all the jokes about, there's no U-Hauls behind the hearse. What do you want to do with your money? I remember a story. It was kind of funny one time. A pastor at a church got up and he was kind of clever and he said, "I've got a word for you." And he said, "I just found out there are no bankers, financial planners, or investments in heaven. You have to give all your money away before you go there." And then with a little chuckle and a smile, he said, just as the offering plate was being passed, "Isn't it time we start practicing giving it away?" We all smiled and we all chuckled, and we certainly appreciated the power behind his message. Not given in an offensive or hard or deeply challenging way, but a discovering and delightful way. That's right. And there is where you can begin to look at money that creates memories. How we deal with the mementos, how we create those monuments of faith and character that which may require money, and how do we pass that on to others. And there we are. We're doing the work that is vital to perhaps leaving that legacy, doing that estate plan, figuring a way out to make sure that will is solid and well in place. What do you want to do with your money? Because you're going to pass it on. Now, there are people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates who've attempted to say to people give it away. Don't even pass it on to other people. Give it away to others. That's a decision you make. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to pass it on to your family? Do you want to pass it on to certain charities? What's going to happen to that money you have? Now, you see what you have? What you have done is you have created a conversation in which people share stories. And I keep telling you, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again and again, storytelling is the only effective means of communication. People will begin to do things when they hear your story. They'll connect with you and relate to you when they hear your story. And then when you share your story and they share their story, discoveries of what we want begin to happen. In effect, you're giving your clients and your colleagues and your customers and yourself permission to tell the stories about the memories they have and want to create, the mementos they have and want to pass on, the monuments to faith and character and goodness that they want to pass on. And when it comes to money, and money is something that we get emotional about, it's something that means a lot to us, how do we want that to work on afterwards? What do we want it to be doing? Again, how do we want to be remembered? Now, do you see how all of this is beginning to work? I believe that in helping your clients and customers and helping you go through this exercise is one of the most powerful and effective and challenging and in sometimes even a delightful way to help a person create a legacy project, to put together a powerful and well-connected and well-thought-through financial plan. And then you, as their advisor or their colleague or their friend, you help them put the details together. You help them do it in a way that works best for them, that allows for them to have maximum advantages in how all of those things can be put together with the right financial structures and the right legal structures and the best things that will help in terms of the taxes they must pay and how that all works. And again, they don't want to know that. They don't want to talk about that. They want you to understand that and do that for them. They simply want someone to listen to their stories. And now you can come forward, having heard their stories about what they really want to pass on their legacy, leaving in their treasure chest. You can help connect them to a plan and a purpose and a way to execute that good stuff. Isn't that a whole lot more fun than sitting down over all kinds of legal documents and illustrations? We certainly have to use that and get there, but help people dream and desire and find ways to have the wishes of their heart expressed by going through the 4 M's. But you recall, as I said, there are 5 M's. Because you see, here's the problem. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have some thoughtful intentions behind that, as one of my friends said, oh, if you don't have a will, by golly, you do have one. The state has one for you, and they will decide what's going to happen to your money, to your estate, to the things you have. If you don't have a will and you don't have a plan, somebody has a will and a plan for you, and it's probably not the one you would have and probably not the one you would want. So if you don't do the job of helping people be thoughtful, if you yourself, if I myself am not thoughtful about this, you know what I'm going to leave? The 5th M. That's right. It's a mess. You know what? You've all seen it happen, and I just simply use this as an illustration. People have lived a life. They have insurance, they have financial statements, and you know what? They bring it all in a paper bag, and there you have it. It's a mess. And that's just an illustration of what has happened to so many people who have not taken time to think, to pray, to plan, to seek wise counsel, to seek the kinds of things that could be helpful to them in filling their life with purpose and direction as they come to the end of their life so that they can have the treasure chest full of the good stuff they want to pass on and the good stuff that will make a difference in the lives of others. So, do you want to leave a mess? You can do that. There are story after story after story after story of people, not because they were bad, not because they were thoughtless, but because they didn't take time, left an incredible mess for their heirs and their family and maybe their friends. I'm thinking of a woman right now who is just going through a mountain of agony because as much as her daddy loved her and she loved her daddy, she's a good Southern gal, he didn't leave a plan. And now trying to make everything work afterwards has been a real mess for her and has taken away a lot of the joy in the memories that she had of her life with her father. Too bad. Didn't have to happen. And we're all aware of those situations. So there you go. I hope this has been helpful. This is a new way of thinking. It's not just about that will. It's not just about that estate plan. It's not just about working that legal and financial documentation and putting it all together in the right way. It is helping people figure out what is important to them in their life and how they can be challenged with the idea that they have a treasure chest that they're going to pass on. And with thoughtfulness and planning and purpose and direction and wise counsel, they can pass that treasure chest on to the people they love and care about in ways that truly make a difference. So there we go. A new way of thinking, a new way of helping people, and a new way of living our lives, helping us truly to answer the question, how do you want to be remembered? Perhaps you need to begin with the end in mind, and we always discover every day that we're putting something in the treasure chest to pass on to others, and we live with the power and the passion, the purpose each day of knowing that right now and in the future, we're leaving a treasure chest of goodness, greatness, and grace to others. So I ask you, what's in your treasure chest? Making choices. What's in your treasure chest? I'm Stan Hustad, wishing you all the best and blessings. Keep in touch. Ask questions. Ask me if I can help you with your work and in your business and in your life. Again, Stan at marketinglifecoach.com. Stan at marketinglifecoach.com. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. I hope this will go well in your treasure chest. Bye for now.